Well, what can I say, Julie? Thank you very much for taking part at Luca the podcast.
I love
And
it. Luca the podcast.
I love it. No, I really love the idea that we can meet up and we can share point of view. And as we've been chatting just now, there
Yeah.
is so many things that probably we have in common. Maybe we have different point of view, and I think this is a great opportunity to let them know the people in the industry out there that there is more than one option. There is more opportunity out there, and we can inspire them a little bit.
Absolutely.
And what is interesting about you is a little bit how everything started. I mean, you are in this industry. I consider you the queen of New York. I have to tell you. And I really admire you, what you've been doing over the years. And you've been a role model in many aspects, like us coming from a little town in Milan and then going to London and see all those global personality traveling in the world, for me has been wow.
Yeah.
And we're really curious to know a little bit about yourself, how everything started from the early days.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I grew up in Hawaii. So, hospitality was sort of just a part of day-to-day life there because my house was a revolving door of people visiting, so like I was constantly like passing hors d'oeuvres for my mom, and people would come and stay for a month or weeks on end. So I think hospitality for me was sort of really ingrained in me as a kid. And also Hawaii, Waikiki, my first jobs was serving cocktails in Waikiki to people. So I mean, it's always been a part of who I was growing up. Um, but that was sort of
Is the hospitality,
yeah,
right?
just hospitality and
Hospitable.
yeah. I mean, when you live in a place as beautiful as Hawaii, it was just literally like my house was just like constantly people visiting. It's like,
I love
and
that.
my room was the guest room. So
Yeah.
I, got to sleep on the couch. But yeah, I mean, we had a mango tree in the backyard and I was blending mango margaritas for my mom. And, so it was
Casually.
yeah. My dad was in the 1 hour photo business, back when you would drop your film off. I mean, it doesn't seem like that long ago,
Ooh.
but in the 80s, that's what it was. So that was sort of the basic origin of growing up and moving towards hospitality.
When you felt it like has been like, I want to work as a bartender, and there has been a specific moment or a specific person or a specific time that inspired you to be?
Well, so the first job I had in Waikiki, it was all women servers and all men behind the bar. I mean, a lot of the time in many parts of the world, it's still the case, sadly. How many years later? 30 years later. But I would look behind the bar and I was so fascinated at what they were doing and how they were making the drinks. But I was like 18 years old, so there was no chance that I was ever going to get back there. But I asked questions and I would look. And then when I went to college, I had my first opportunity to get behind a bar and bartend. But as far as like really learning and making cocktails and doing volume, it was in San Francisco at a bar called the Red Room. That was like, I lived on the corner and they opened this bar and it was all female bartenders. And the door person was like a very big butch lesbian at the door, and like she was so mean. But that was really the bar that I was like, I can do that, because I actually saw myself in the people that were behind the bar.
You saw it more like a career
Yeah,
than actually just I do the job because.
Exactly, and then I started dating the bar manager there, and she would throw me behind the bar like speed rack style, and just because I hadn't really been to bartending school or anything like that, but she would just yell drink rounds at me and I would make the drink rounds. And that was kind of how it really kind of took off and started for me, as far as being like, this is what I want to do.
And what has been your takeaway from your cultural living environment, Waikiki, that you brought into the bar? That for you has been like, this is the core, is my value that I bring every day to the bar till to this date.
Well, I mean, I think that early on in my career, it was very much this fresh, modern, tropical sort of ingredients, right? at a time in America where everything was still sour mix on the gun and nobody was using fresh ingredients, I was like, why can't I take this mango and blend it up like I did when I was a kid, you know? And so I started doing that kind of thing. And that, you know, it kind of became my early in my career, my sort of signature, you know, I was using lychee and lemongrass and a lot of these ingredients and flavors that I had grown up with behind the bar, which was how I initially was written about as far as the drinks I was doing. And I was doing a pineapple infused rum and, you know, it's like, it was mind blowing stuff, you know, but like, it's true. But, you know, in the late 90s, it really was like, because everything was just Rosie's sweetened lime juice and
powder, I guess,
yeah,
and syrups.
I mean,
and
we've
things.
come right back to it, haven't we? But we're right back to powdered acids. But yeah, that was sort of, you know, my initial entry into the business was really fresh ingredients and just trying to think more like taking a more culinary approach to cocktails.
And what has been the response from the other side? Like people were appreciating it in the beginning, or they were like, not sure, I prefer my sweetened mix.
No, it was very well received. So I was working this little bar in the West Village called C3, and it was attached to a restaurant. So
Was after San Francisco.
This was, yeah. So I moved to New York with my then girlfriend, now wife. She got into grad school at NYU.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I'm just bartending in San Francisco. You know, I can do this anywhere. And I've always wanted to live in New York. So we moved to New York. She started going to grad school at NYU, and I was bartending in this little bar. And I started I was the bar manager. You know, I actually had a title. So my parents were it was acceptable at that point, you know, because before that,
because you had to have it.
Yeah, they were like, when are you going to get a real job? Because bartending in the 90s was not considered a real job. It was just what you did while you were figuring out what you really want to do, you know?
Yes. Yeah, I lived that as well.
Yeah, I'm sure, you know. So so the people who were coming to C3, you know, New Yorkers want the best of everything, right? And even back then it was like, obviously the food scene here has always been amazing, but people will travel for great things. So suddenly I give somebody a daiquiri made with fresh lime juice and they're like mind blown, you know, and then they kept coming back for more stuff, for more of the drinks. So I was just trying to do seasonal menus, and I was talking to pastry chefs and just trying to put the best thing I could in a glass, which at that time almost nobody was doing. And I didn't really know, you know, this was there wasn't really a lot with the internet happening, or, you know, there were no cell phones. Like, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but there wasn't access to a lot of information. So I was just kind of doing my thing, trying to bring in as many people as possible. And there was a theater next door, and Dale DeGroff was a member of this theater. So some of the actors were like, hey, there's this girl in this little bar next door, and she's making these really great drinks. So Dale walks in. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what the Rainbow Room was. I really knew very little about the industry, you know, at that time.
You went just like, you know, really humble, you know, I'm coming here, I'm making great drinks.
Yeah, I just was entertaining myself, honestly, you know, trying to be like, hey, you're going to love this, you know. But he walked in and he was like, hey, kid, I hear you're making some really good drinks in here. And then he had been writing this article for a magazine called 411 magazine that was sort of like, you would get it on the corner in New York City, that told you about bars, restaurants, clubs, events. Like, that's how you got your information, is you would grab the 411 magazine. And he was like, I want to write about your blood orange Cosmo, because I was doing this Cosmo riff with like Stoli orange and blood orange juice.
Great. Great.
You know, it was my first riff, really,
yes.
You know.
Yeah.
You put some Santoni in it, would have been probably better.
That makes me feel really good about it. Thank you, Julie.
But people were really into it. And the next thing I knew, I was on the front page of the food section of the New York Times for the drinks that I was doing. Which was a trip. And then it sort of snowballed from there, New York Magazine. And then they were like calling me a cocktail expert. And I was like, oh shit, I'm not an expert. I was like, try to read everything I could, you know, but access to information was not that easy.
But it's interesting that you brought in your culture and you changed the perspective of people, changing one thing,
Yeah.
just fresh ingredients.
Yeah.
It sounds like, can I say, like you almost discovered like the fire, and
Yeah.
they were like, what?
I know. Well, what was funny is that time in San Francisco, people were using fresh juice, but San Francisco is not as global of a city as New York. And because the internet wasn't there and there was no, exchange of
There wasn't.
information, these things weren't really traveling as much other than like people who go to San Francisco and then come here. And that was part of the reason, one of the first drinks that I had written about in the New York Times was this apple martini that I did, because this woman who was an actress came back from LA and she was like, I had this apple martini in LA. And I was like, oh, if I was going to make an apple martini, what would I want it to taste like? And I had never had apple pucker. I didn't realize that was what they were using. So I was already infusing pineapples into vodka and rum. So I was like, oh, I'm going to take Granny Smith green apples and I'm going to infuse them into this vodka. And then I started there because I was like, I want an apple martini to taste like you're biting into an apple, but with a kick, right? Because it still should be a martini.
Yes.
But I wanted it to taste like actual apples, not like candied apples. So that was sort of where I started. And then I had like a pommeau and an apple cider that I was doing like a splash of, and
You start to build from there.
Yeah. And it ended up in the New York Times, so.
That is a big thing.
Yeah. But that was like information traveled with an actress from LA to New York. And that was how I got the idea to even do that drink to begin with.
Impressive. And you were a bartender here in New York. You start to make, let's say, the name for yourself without even knowing it. You were just entertain yourself, as you said, but entertain your guest, and things, they start to get to a good position.
Well, it's that lesson of like, I was really just doing what I was passionate about, and I was really good at it at that time. And next thing I know, like people are writing about it. So it's like, follow your passion and good things will come,
Is in that moment that you had in mind, now I have a bigger dream? Like, because I got the feeling that you were like, no, I want to be a bartender, right? And then now you have many cocktail bars around the city. And I'm like, how did you get there?
Well, I realized very quickly that this was an untapped market in a city where everything has been done. New York City, there's competition to like sell hot dogs on the corner, right? There's another guy who wants to sell hot dogs on that corner, or like to have a seat on the subway. Like this city is highly competitive. And so I was like, how is it possible that nobody is really making delicious cocktails with fresh ingredients in New York City, especially after being in San Francisco, where there were multiple places that were using fresh ingredients. So I was like, I got to open a bar like tomorrow,
That fast. How long did it take you to realize?
I mean, I knew that it was one of those things where I started getting written about a lot, right? And then Dale was sending me out on these like, go to this celebrity bartender or whatever. And I walked in and Audrey was there and she and I were like, hey. And then I started talking to Audrey Saunders and stuff and showing her my infusions, and we started chatting. And, it was one of those, I realized that the time was now, and that New Yorkers were ready for it and they wanted it. And I was like, if I can get a place open, I know that I can make it a success. I just didn't know how to get to that place. So then I started talking to people who knew the aspects of the business that I did not know, real estate, construction, I didn't know anything about
as a bartender.
No.
From my point of view, it's like, how do I manage that? No idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And how did you go through, like, how did you learn that side yourself, or you had a partner back then?
Yeah. So I ended up, a friend of mine who worked at that bar in San Francisco where I kind of was learning at, had moved back to New York, and her mom owned a bar here in New York. She was kind of born and raised here. Her name was Michelle Connolly. And I started talking to her. I was like, hey, we should open a bar, because I knew that she had connections here. And so, we started chatting, and then she was like, oh, I have some friends who own this bar. And then we met with them and ended up, and that was sort of right before September 11th happened. And we were in talks with them when all of that kind of happened. And I almost didn't end up even doing it. But that was how it happened. And we met people, and ultimately in 2003, we opened Flatiron Lounge, which was my first bar.
And how you felt it on day one when you got the key and you were like, this is my place?
I mean, it was an incredible feeling, you know. It was really an accomplishment that I was running my mouth. I'm going to open my own bar, you know, and um, ultimately, I actually got fired from the bar that I was at because
You were opening this one, let me
well,
guess.
I wasn't even close to like they didn't even know that I was even thinking about it at the time, but because of all the press that I had gotten, the chef and the restaurant manager were like bent out of shape because you had to walk through the restaurant to get to the bar. So the restaurant just was so and not very busy. I was like, not my problem, boys. But so
I'm making the difference
it
today.
became like a walkway to get to the bar. So the bar is packed. I'm making a ton of money back there. So they were mad. So they went to the owner and they were like, she's going to open her own bar and steal all of your clientele, which they didn't even know that I was contemplating that at the time. But ultimately, I got fired for doing too good of a job because she was sure that I was going to, in fact, open my own bar. And that just like really fueled the fire. You know, I was like, I'll show you. I'm going to open my own fucking bar and you're going to read about it all the time, you know? So,
You go like, now it's my turn,
yeah. And then I was running my mouth about it. I was like, okay, well, now I have to do it, you know?
Yeah, it's a must.
Yeah. So,
Do you think
it
you've been
just,
pushed by them in a way?
oh, absolutely. For
Tell me I can't do
100%.
it and I'm gonna go out there and do it.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, you're afraid I'm going to steal all your clientele? Well, now I'm going to try. It was
Super
never
honest.
my intention whatsoever, but yeah.
And then so you open your own place, your dream become something that you felt like
Yeah.
really comfortable in. What has been the biggest challenge on the top of the not financial, but the managing of the place, the renting that you mentioned to us, that you had to face when you open your own place?
I mean, I would say, I mean, in all of the places that I've opened, I think the biggest lesson and the greatest challenge was finding the right partners.
Finding the right partners.
Yes.
How do you do
Because,
that?
well, usually you fuck it up to begin with. I guess I'm swearing too much on this podcast, but you screw it up. You know, I was one of those. I had an opportunity. I took it. I was not entirely sure that this was the right team of people. Um, and you learn lessons, and when things don't seem to be adding up and are not quite fair, and you realize that this perhaps is not the best partnership. Um, but eventually I got there, and a couple bars later.
Well, you need to do a lot of mistakes to get it right.
Exactly.
That's
And
what they're saying.
I mean, I was very young. I was 30 when I opened Flatiron Lounge. So I was still a kid and I was still learning. I mean, I didn't know, I'm always laughing as like Phil Ward was behind the bar at Flatiron Lounge. And, it was like we were learning about how to make drinks together at that time. It was like Dale was really my only the only person I could really talk to and about drinks at the time that was really open. Audrey as well. And I met people here and there. I mean, Sasha, I would go down to Milk and Honey. He would come into Flatiron Lounge a lot, but his stuff was very different because we were super high volume. So we weren't really doing the same style of drinks. But yeah, I was like really learning on the job.
Yeah. And how has been the relationship in between you and Dale, the Groff? Like, tell us.
Yeah, I mean, he's like my dad, Like, I was like laugh because it's true. I mean, I was I think 28 when I met him at C3, and he's been a part of my journey and my career since like almost the beginning, and was one of the first people to write about what I was doing there, and has really just been a great sounding board, even though I never actually worked behind a bar with Dale. He was always just so kind and open with information and willing to share. I would do events with Dale and Steve Olson, and I mean, like, his son was my bar back at one of the first, Baby
Yeah,
G, Leo
one of the
DeGroff,
thing, yeah.
so he really has been a big influence on my career over the years, and has always been there and comes to the anniversary parties, and
You
he's
feel it really
just,
close to your heart.
yeah,
I can see
yeah.
from the words you're
Oh,
mentioning.
absolutely. Yeah, he's a gem.
You
Yeah.
will consider him like your first mentor?
No, I would consider, so the woman in San
Mm.
Francisco who yelled drinks at me, I think she was really my first mentor.
Okay.
I
Yes.
mean, she was also my girlfriend at the
Yeah.
time, but I learned a lot in that early time period about drinks and hospitality and how to fill a room, and
Do you think you learn different aspects of the business in between New York and San Francisco?
oh, for
Like
sure.
this, from what you said, it seems to be like San Francisco back then. It was like the speed, entertain the room, and
Yep.
then you arrive to New York. It's like, I need to make a point.
Yeah.
I need to create an experience. That's what I perceive, right?
Yeah, well, the drinks were better in San Francisco. Like, I mean, they just were. There weren't really menus at most of the places. I mean, the Red Room did have a menu of like classic cocktails. But it was sort of like, at that time you didn't really see cocktail lists, so that was something that I kind of started doing when I got here, and obviously Dale had already been doing that at the Rainbow Room, and but for the most part the cocktails were just higher quality in San Francisco in the 90s than they were in New York. Like, you would go to like a like a Michelin starred restaurant, and they would have a shitty bar, but then it's like the best food in the world, but your daiquiri has Rosie's lime juice in it, and I think a lot of the chefs at that time too in New York did not want to embrace any competition by another personality in a restaurant, so
I
they
was about to
really,
come to this point.
yeah, they were not supportive. I mean, like the chef who got me fired, I mean, like it was like, I'm supposed to be the star of this restaurant, how dare you take my shining light,
It's a ego fight. It's a ego fight.
Totally.
But
Yeah.
still to this date, I will say,
Yeah.
I've been eating many restaurants, and some of them, yeah, Michelin star restaurant. The beverage program is so left behind, and I'm like, why are you doing that? People drink more than what they can eat. If you think
Exactly.
about it,
Yeah.
just give them the essential, but done it well.
Yeah.
Done it well. And sometimes, as you said, is the ego. Or, sometimes certain chefs, they look the numbers. They like to look those Excel sheets, and they're like, this is cost is too much. Like, we can't afford it. Let's go cheap.
But meanwhile, like, you make a lot more money on the booze than you do on food.
Absolutely.
So
yes, that's the thing. Well, one thing that really took my attention is the way how you perceive mentorship. I mean, you've been mentoring all of us without even knowing it, probably, but you've been influenced all of our point of view, drink side, even the way how you present yourself, because you've been great since day one, and we felt it really much. I say, speaking like I'm in Europe. Oh, literally, I'm in London. Okay. What does it mean for you, mentorship, and how do you help your team to express who they are, and how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are in hospitality, and mentoring and teaching and helping people is what we do, right? So it's only natural that you're doing the same for your team and your staff and the people that are coming into to work with you at your bar. I mean, I've always just, in the early days at Flatiron Lounge, there was not a lot of talent in the city, so it was sort of like I had to teach everybody exactly what I wanted them to be doing, because nobody knew, right? And so few bars were using fresh ingredients. I had to be like, okay, when you use fresh lime juice, you only got it's like, these are the proportions that you want to use, so early on, I was forced to really just constantly be teaching. And that just sort of kind of dictated my career in a way, and that, okay, this is what's happening. If you want to get consistency out of your beverage program, you have to put in the time to teach and train and mentor. And, that was sort of the beginning of it. And then as I opened more and more bars and I kind of stepped out from behind the bar, it became a little bit more talking to people about career choices and how to what to, when is it time to move on to the next thing, and life mentorship, and how to have work life balance, and maintain yourself in an industry where we're pushing booze, and to not have an issue with it yourself. So there've certainly been different levels of mentorship over the years, and I just really just try to be a good listener, and hear what people are looking for from me, as far as some people want techniques and bar, cocktail mentorship, and others, again, it's like about career choices, and how to have a balanced
Yeah, because
existence.
I guess everybody they can work for you for a long period of time,
Mhm.
but sometimes you feel like it's time for them to fly away.
Yeah.
And how do you manage that? So, because back in the days when I used to run bars, I felt really much sometimes like, this person, I'm so sad that I'm losing it. Is there anything I
Yeah.
can do for you to? But then you realize that whatever you can do, it will never be enough, and
Yeah.
it will not work for that person. How do
Yep.
you manage that? Do you usually help them on the process?
Yeah, I mean, well, so we're certainly known in the industry for having a lot of employees who stay with us for quite a long time. And for that is first and foremost, the goal is to give enough opportunity and upward mobility to have people join your organization as maybe a host or a barback, and be able to be like, okay, you're next. Now you're going to be a server. Now you're going to learn how to be a barback. Now you're the bartender. I mean, I have my bar manager at Clover Club has worked for me for 18 years. Started as a barback at Flatiron Lounge, then came down to Lani Kai, which was my short-lived tropical spot that I had. Then he came out to Clover Club, became a bartender, and then he became the bar manager. And I have Pedro, who works at Clover, and Milady's has been with me for 16 years.
Wow.
My head bartender is 12 years. So we really do try to facilitate like next steps. But with that being said, oftentimes there are those people who, okay, it's time for you to move on to your next thing. And, and we've even taken people and created the next thing with them. My partner, Tom Macy, started at Clover Club as a barback, then became the bartender, then became head bartender. And he was interested in making an RTD because at that time we were like, there's nothing great out there. So I started working with him on this idea, and then we launched Social Hour Cocktails together, in 2020. It's really good timing. But
Just on point.
And he is, he's also a partner at Clover Club at this point. But now he works 100% of the time on Social Hour, so Ivy Mix was another one who was a bartender, wanted to open her own bar, was having a hard time with that. And we figured out, we were like, we had an opportunity fall in our laps to open Leyenda across the street in that space.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. And, which had a 10-year run. And I was like, Ivy, why don't we open this bar with you? And it'll be, her passion was agave spirits. And, so we built the bar around what her passions were. So, we're always sort of trying to help if we can to assist in the next thing for people. But, my goal always is, if somebody is ready to move on, I hope that it's not like to go bartend at another bar if they're a bartender. I want, I would rather they, move into another aspect of our industry. I've had quite a few people become brand ambassadors, or, or go to work for, larger organizations, doing in a different role. So that's
always big. How do you choose your team? Or since the beginning that you start to run your own business, what
Yeah.
has been the primarily thing? Like their skills, their personality,
Yeah.
or a mix of the both? You tell me.
Yeah. Well, early on, there wasn't, again, like I was saying, there wasn't a lot of talented bartenders doing cocktails in the city. So I hired on personality 100%. And I think it really kind of dictated how I hire people, even today. You know, somebody walks in, and I always say, I'm like, for me, half of the interview is how they make me feel from the entry from to the front door to sitting down with me, because that's what the guest feels, right? There is just something that an aura about people. Do they have a warmth about them? Do I like them before they even open their mouth and speak? You know, and if the answer is no, oftentimes I'm like, nope, next. You know, because I can teach anybody how to bartend or cocktail serve, or you know, if you invest enough time in training, you'll get exactly what you want from people. But there are just those things that you can't teach, that are just ingrained in here, you know, that
The values.
yeah, their values, their
Which are the values you are looking for?
I want people who want to take care of other people. You know, I mean, that is ultimately,
Simple as it is.
that's what we do. Make people happy, you know, who care more about others than themselves, sometimes to a fault, you know. Yeah, and who just like want to give an experience. So, you know, I'm always looking for those qualities.
And what has been the gap in between Flatiron and Clover Club? You said you had the bar in the middle, right?
So, well, so we opened Flatiron Lounge was 2003, and then we opened Pegu Club in 2005, which was the same partners at Flatiron Lounge, and we brought Audrey Saunders in to be the face of Pegu Club, mainly because at the time, like my partners were like, they wanted me to do it, and I was like, I mean, I was so young, and I was just like, how can I do another bar already? I was like, I'm here 6 days a week. I was behind the bar 6 days a week. I was like, there's no way that this is possible. And I was like, if anybody needs their own platform, it's Audrey. And so we brought her in. So Pegu Club was next. Then Clover Club, which was the 2008 with a different partner. And then that partner, we opened Lani Kai in 2010. There were a lot of lessons learned in that space.
Yeah.
It was too big, wrong location. You know, it was like listening to your gut instincts. You know, because I had signed a 3-bar deal with the Clover Club partner at the time. And so when it came time, he was like, "Oh, we got to open bar number 2." And you know, and I was like, "Oh, same sort of thing." I was like, "I don't know that I'm ready yet," but we have to
do it.
We have to do it. And he saw this space in Lower Manhattan. You know, it's like on the edge of Soho, but not really Soho. And, you know, it was just like the lesson of like, listen to your instincts. Cause I walked in the door and I looked around and I was like, I don't know. It's really big and it's kind of a weird location. And 2 years later, when we sold the space, it was too big and it was kind of a weird location, you know?
It didn't change. It didn't change.
No, that was like, you know, it was just not the right thing. But then, so Lani Kai, and then we opened, and then we actually bought that partner out of Clover Club with our current partnership team, which is Christine Williams, my wife Susan, and I. And then Tom is a junior partner there, and we opened Leyenda across the street.
Fantastic.
Followed by Milady's, who's the newest.
I was about to come to that point because Milady's, I got the feeling that almost fall on your laps. Like you were like, I have to do it.
That's exactly what
it's
it
not
was,
like in your mind, I want to do another one. It just literally dropped because you told me the story, so I can prepare about it.
Yeah. No, it's true. I really was. I mean, it was coming out of the pandemic, and you know, I was definitely not looking to open anything new. But I had been teaching a lot of Zoom cocktail classes during the pandemic, like a lot of people were. And one of the organizations, it was like a women's alliance group at this organization. And I was teaching, so it would be, you know, lawyers from the PR, all different aspects of this company. And I was in their living rooms for like a year and a half, and their kitchens, teaching them how to make gin and rum drinks, and you name it. I was doing it, and they came. The woman who had been booking me was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this spot? It used to be called Milady's," and I was just like, I know that spot because I used to go there when I was at the bar that I got fired at, C3. It was like down the street because that was like Washington Square Park. And it was just like one of those spaces that always had just such good energy to it. And it was a dive bar. It was a total crappy dive bar that was open for 70 years. And so you go in there, you have like a beer and a shot, but you would leave every single time you left there. You were laughing and carrying on, having the best time, and you wake up the next day and be like, that was so much fun, And I just like, I do believe that, spaces have a soul to them. And that particular spot definitely did. So when it was brought to me, I was like, we have to do it. And also we are the Miladies, I was like, we could have done something different in that space. But I just felt like, I was like, you know what? It was called Milady's for 70 years on this corner of Prince and Thompson. It should be Milady's still, and just like a 2.0. And now it is owned by ladies.
Perfect. I mean, it's a wonderful spot, and we love it. I'm probably going to pop by later.
Oh,
so,
good.
Yeah.
It is so much fun. I sit up on that landing on Saturday nights sometimes, and I just like, my wife, Susan, and I are like, we sit there and we just laugh because like, it's like a young crowd. They're all like singing along to Britney Spears and dancing. And I'm just like, I can't believe we opened this place, because it's so different from Clover Club. But it's just like, it's such a good time. And it's like coming out of the pandemic also, I was just like, I just wanted to do something that didn't take itself too seriously, that was just fun. And obviously the drinks are going to be great, but like, let's jump around and blow bubbles and act silly and sing along to Britney Spears,
yeah. And it seems to be like, sometimes like, make it easy to understand. I say this because my era has been the most complicated related to the menu reading. I don't know if you had this kind of perception where you go through and you're like, what the hell is that?
Right.
Am I stupid? I don't know. I've been working in the industry for 10 years. I don't know what that ingredients
is. But
is.
That's the goal, is like they want you, it's like trying to make something sound so much more complicated than it actually is, so that you think it's fancier.
Fancier, yeah. and I'm like,
house-made such and such, but it's our house-made orange bitters with blah blah, and they just took two different bitters and put them together. Now it's house-made.
Yes. Okay. It's just like hand blend.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I'm like, okay, I shot in a beer. Thank you. Like,
No, it's true. Like, you go in these places and you're like, I don't want to read all of this stuff on this menu, and I don't want all the things that come. I'm like, I just have a martini or a Negroni. That's it.
That's it.
That's all I want.
Leave me alone. Leave me alone. There is one part about you that is really interesting, because I think you've been really much the pioneer, on the top of all the thing that you brought along with you here in New York, has been that you start to work with brands and you kind of show the way how to do it. How has been that? Like, from one day to another, they come and call you, or you were like kind of pitching on them, or you had idea? How has been the whole thing?
I mean, honestly, like, I haven't like partnered with brands very much at all, especially not early on in my career. I would say, later for sure, more so because I had to. Early on, I was like, I was more about like, I would make a gin cocktail, and I would try it with 8 different gins and blind taste all of the drinks. And then the one that made it on the menu was the one that tasted the best. And if it happened to have your gin in it, good for you.
I see.
You won the game. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But we could do it back then. Now, it like everything is so expensive, from labor, cost of goods, liquor, rent, everything is so pricey that you really do have to kind of
balance out,
get in bed, so to speak, with brands. And, it can be challenging because you don't want, I think, in Europe, it's very different, where a large organization can walk in and hand a bar a check for $50,000, and now they've bought the whole menu. And now every single brand on their menu belongs to this particular brand company, which I think is kind of a disservice, in a way. But I understand why they do it. But in America, that's very much illegal. So
Can be possible to be
you
done.
can't
Yeah.
really do that. So working with brands can be complicated in the U.S. And we're not playing the same game a lot of the time that
But
bars are.
but as a personal branding, because like Julie, you have a massive personal branding that you carry with you, and
Yeah.
like on that side, like how do you do it? You work along with brands, and
I mean,
you sharing.
I work with brands that I believe in. I mean, if I'm like, Simone came into Clover Club, 2 years ago, I think, with Santoni, and I love Simone was always like, I remember my first time sitting at Simone's bar, and I was just like, he was the most captivating bartender. And this was like, it was like, world class, global night at Artesian, and we were like celebrating Charles Joly had won, and I was there, and I just was like so enamored by him as a bartender. So he walks into my bar anyway with this, and I was just like, I love that you stopped by to tell me about something that you're passionate about. And, I've always been wanting to help other bartenders who create brands and people who have inspired me, Simon Ford. He was like one of the first. He walked into Flatiron Lounge with Plymouth Gin, when I was building, and was the first time somebody who had a passion and a connection to what was inside the bottle walked into my bar to tell me about it. And like the opening menu of Flatiron Lounge had 2 or 3 Plymouth Gin drinks on it, because I was like, he's the cutest. And, but he cared, and he was passionate, and he loved drinks, and he wanted to talk to me about it. And prior to that moment, it was just salesmen who came in and were like, hey, Toots, how come you need this Stoli raspberry on your back bar?
Otherwise,
and I was just like, yeah, you can go now. So yeah, for me, it's always, from the very beginning, it's always been about helping people, and helping brands that I think are great and that I believe in. And I still try to do that on a regular basis.
That's a really beautiful what you just said, especially in this world where everything, like, if you notice it, sometimes when you speak with other professionals from the industry, they're like, there is this brand, this is amazing, you should take it in. And they look at you, it's like, yeah, but do they have budget? That's the question number one.
I know.
I didn't even do they have budget? Because we would like to do this. I'm like, we are talking about artisanal product made by people that they make a living,
exactly.
Sometimes it's not equal.
No,
what I wanted to say between
true.
Corporate and artisanal, and in the mind of people, like, oh yeah, we need to get this money to, I'm like,
yeah. I mean, and I think in the US, again, because we can't really take as much money we can't take money from brands. So it's more so about relationships. And yeah, I mean, yes, like they might throw a party in your venue, but you're not just like getting handed a check like you can in
Europe.
London.
Yeah, in London. Yeah.
And most of the rest of the world.
It's called support.
Yeah. Thank you for your support.
But you get used to that afterwards,
Yeah.
And then maybe you start your own place, and you're like, how much I can get from this? But then you're like, but I like this brand, I would like to bring it in. And you don't give a chance to really like showcase what's really good. And remember, in my point of view is, you don't give truth, to the brands that are with you, to your customer, to your guest, which are the most important. We are here to create experiences, right?
Yeah.
So do it at your best. And I wish it could be a little bit simpler, but
yeah, no, I agree. Well, and oftentimes too, it's like there are these beautiful small brands and small products that don't have a shot,
No, Julie, there is one part that is really like, I would like to know more from your side, is like, what would you advise to a bartender that he start to put his feet into the role as a bartender today?
Number one, I would say, take your time and learn all of the things. I think that the young people today who are entering our industry, they see all of the people traveling everywhere and the, award ceremonies and all this stuff. And they want in like 2 years, they want to go from being a barback to being standing on a stage accepting an award. And that's not how this works. Like these careers are it takes time to get there. So put in the time, study, read all of the information, work in different venues, like just try to absorb as much as you can, and learn as much as you can, to find what's right for you. Things don't come as quickly as, a 15-second TikTok video.
Overnight success, it doesn't exist.
No, I mean, I've been doing this for 30 something years, I mean, it's a long game. And, you might see people and you think that, they open a bar and 2 years later, their bar is the best bar in the world, supposedly on a, whatever, but their career didn't start 2 years ago. It started 20 years before that, doing all sorts of different things. They started as a busboy, and, it's like learning about hospitality and learning about our industry and working in restaurants and working in bars and, being in a dive bar and then being a cocktail bar and maybe working in fine dining and all of the different things that you learn in these different styles of places. So that would be
I totally agree with you. I would say as well, like, work hard.
Yeah, have a
alongside
work ethic.
of learning, like, work really hard.
Yeah.
Because if you don't work hard, nothing will be handed to you.
No.
And you need to go out there and take it, and you need to feel it as well when the opportunity can go through. And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Exactly.
We all make it.
Yeah.
I made tons, and I will make many more probably. But one question that it really get me to know, because you're an entrepreneur, you are a bartender, you help brands to develop their potential, let's say, in many aspects. But one thing that comes to my head is, like, you've been doing a lot of TVs. And would you like to tell us a little bit more how you get there and how the opportunity came to you?
Yeah. We're talking about Drink Masters, obviously.
Which we love it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And we really hope for the second season, I have to say.
Yes, me too. It was funny because before 2020, everybody who reached out to me about anything reality TV shows, or I would say no. I'm like, nope, not interested. I wouldn't let them film in my bars, because there were like people flipping tables over and just doing silly things that I didn't want associated with my bars. And I didn't want my guests to be a part of any of that. So I said no to all of it. And then I was sitting at a table at the front of Clover Club selling people drinks in containers to go. And I was like, well, if we can't stand next to each other, we have a problem here. So when they reached out to me about the show, I responded and I was like, okay. And I was like, at least I'll have the conversation, but the whole time I was talking to them, I was not sure that it was something I wanted to do. And then I was also kind of like, they're never going to pick me anyway, but I'll just keep talking to them just to see what happens. And then ultimately they asked me to do it. I was just like, I didn't even call the guy back, the casting director back for like a day and a half. He's like, because everybody else was just like chomping at the bit. I was like, I don't know. I'm going to miss Thanksgiving and Christmas is right there, But ultimately I ended up saying yes and doing it. And it was actually a really fantastic experience. Netflix is a huge company. And they hired a lot of consultants to tell them how to best portray drinks on screen. Food is actually easier because it can sit for longer before it looks like a dead drink. Like cocktails are like, you got to drink it while it's laughing at you, right? But food, like a plate of food on Top Chef or something, it can sit for 20 minutes and it's still fine, So they hired the right people and got a great group of bartenders in there, and it was a good experience.
I've got a question because I watched it, and how real it is from what is appearing on video.
It's real.
It's really like that.
100%.
And what's the timing? Like, how long does it take to do one production? Or
it was about 2.5 days to shoot one episode, really. I mean, as the competitors got voted off, it was less time,
Okay.
because there were fewer people to talk to and, get commentary from. But yeah, I mean, it took quite a while to shoot one episode, but the time that, from when they said your time starts now and they would go into the kitchen, like that was real time, and I would stand there with Frankie and Tone, and sometimes I'm like, for an hour, however much time they had, we would just talk, and watch what they were doing and walk through the kitchen. And that was real,
But they were advising you to say something, or it was just fully yourself? Because usually, those type of things, they put you like,
Yeah.
make it critical,
Yeah.
be mean,
Yeah,
like.
no, they never told me what to say. There was like the introductions and the outro, like where I would be like, your challenge today is blah, blah, blah. Yes, there's the earpiece in your ear and they can feed you what you're saying. Because I'm not an actor. But, it actually, I mean, I did have a lot of theater experience when I was younger. But, that's not what I do for a living. So in order for it to come off good, like, yeah, you'd have an earpiece and it was kind of funny because like the first day I got on the set, they gave me this thing and I didn't know about it at all.
You were like,
And there's
what are you gonna whispering?
There were comedians who were like working with Tone, the host, as writers on the show, and like they would be cracking jokes and I'm like laughing out loud, but I'm the only one hearing what they're saying, so I looked like a crazy person. Then I was like, oh, okay, I need to like not. I need to pretend like they're not there because nobody knows that is actually in my ear. But it was very helpful to get the information about the challenge, correct, to the bar team.
And what has been your takeaway from this experience? Because it's really unique. Not many people that they start as a bartender, they had the opportunity. Usually it's kind of comedian that they are passionate about it. One of the best example, probably Stanley Tucci.
Yes,
it's an actor that traveling the world talking about food. For you has been like the reverse side.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, I remember the first time a camera was put in my face at Flatiron Lounge, I was like, it was so scary to me, because I had done things in front of crowds of people, like monologues or whatever, theater, being in a show, but talking to a camera, I found so much scarier just because it was kind of just impersonal,
I'm talking to who?
Yeah, exactly. Like I do much better, like, things like, hey, bartender, when I was on that, this kind of a situation where I'm talking to somebody and it's being filmed, that's where I shine because I'm good at sound bites. I say what I think, and I'm just, I don't know how I don't really have a filter. I just say what I say.
We like that.
Which is good TV a lot of the time, it turns out. So yeah, they did not tell me what to say. I certainly said all the things I said.
No, that's fantastic. No, that question has been the first thing I said to you. I need to ask. I want to know if I'm sure. I was sure about it, and I was like, is he being advised to say? But now
there was actually one. It was funny because like there was one of the challenges where they had to do a New York sour sort of a riff, and I had the earpiece in there, and the comedian, his name is Rojo, who's hilarious and lives here in New York, and I was commenting on it, and he said, he goes, more like Staten Island, like as a joke, because New York sour, but like it was not so great. So he was making a joke, a dig on Staten Island, which, and I said it out loud. I was like, and it made the show. I was like, more like Staten Island. And it actually ended up on the show. And some people from Staten Island were not very happy with me, but
look, it's probably the most viral reel going on in Instagram. I mean, so
he's a comedian. I was like, it was funny.
Well, at this point, like, how do you see Julie in the next years? What do you see her doing?
I just want to run my bars. To be honest with you, it's been like, I feel like our industry it's ramped up to a point of like chaos in so many, everybody's traveling everywhere. There's a guest shifts and like all of this stuff that is just like, it's just so much noise, like I still love the bars, and I love, it's like Clover Club is sort of my heart and soul. It's my home. 17 years it's been there. Milady's is super fun. I really just want to be back and forth at the bars. I want to get behind the bar occasionally. I want to choose the travel that, I've become a little bit more picky as far as what I want to do things that make sense for me, that make sense for my family, that keep me not on the road 24/7,
I see.
Yeah.
I see, because I'm far from it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
and you said about family. All of us, we really attached. I think all the people I've been chatting, when I say all of us, that we are attached to family, and you are. How do you balance your life work? Said from someone that balance, it doesn't exist much, but I will
Yeah.
get there, I promise.
Yeah.
Tell me, how is your secret, if you have any? Or
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I'm lucky in some ways, because like when, I had, my daughter is 16 years old now. So she, was born like just after we opened Clover Club, and it was a very different time in our industry then, and there wasn't as much travel to be had. So, in those early years, I did choose things very carefully, and I didn't go on the brand trips that were just like, come to see a distillery and drink all of our stuff. Like I said no to all of those things, because being at home with my daughter was more important than going to Mexico to drink tequila,
Yeah.
So I think it's just about really looking at all of the opportunities, looking at your business, looking at your responsibilities, and making a decision with your family on what's best for you. My wife and I made all of those choices together, and she's opened all the bars with me. So we have a unique situation in that, we work together and we live together, and, so it's we
support each other.
Yeah, we support each other
on
and
the choices that
yeah, we
you
choose together the things that make sense, for us and for the businesses and for me personally.
And we are going to the end. How physically and mentally you balance all the things you do? Like, because you just said it makes sense for my family, but in practical order, how do you do it? Like, you pushing yourself. I don't know. People mention they do sports, they do activities. Is there something that he belongs to your personality?
I mean, yeah, I ride my Peloton bike like a crazy lady.
Okay, here we go. We can see the marketing arrive. The first building I saw yesterday was Peloton building. It was like, yeah.
No, I mean, I got
It's a big thing
Peloton
here.
bike in like 2017. I like, because I used to ride a cycling bike at a gym, and I was just like, oh, I
Nice.
hate being in the gym because I don't want people talking to me.
Oh,
So my
focus.
wife got me a Peloton bike at home. I was like, this is the best thing ever. And, and I've been but it has kept me, healthy and in shape, and help to keep a balance. I mean, like in cocktails, everything is all about that balance, so, I try to just keep everything somewhere like
In
this. So it's
between.
not like,
It's good to run my bars,
Yeah.
but then at the same time, I need to make sure that
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
in total health.
Exactly.
A quote that you live by.
A quote that I live by is, gosh, quote to live by. I mean, living on the edge of your comfort zone. Like that is really, life begins at the edge of your comfort zone. Do the things that are a little scary.
I totally agree. I couldn't agree more. Well, with that, I think like I don't have any other question for you. I feel like you said a lot. Unless there is
Yeah.
something that you want to mention or
I don't
anything that
think
you
so. I
want,
mean, we
some
could sit
news.
here.
You got something in the pipeline you want to?
That's the funny thing. I just like, I love that all the writers like, what are you working on next? I'm like, haven't I done enough? Like, can I just chill?
Can you just
I'm gonna go to the beach.
Can you leave me alone?
Why does there have to be? What's the next thing?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like, I
true.
don't know. You know, the next thing is just like,
Be good.
yeah,
Be yourself. Well,
yeah.
Julia, I can only think. I want to hug you. Come on.
Like we could sit here and talk all day.